Hi, welcome back. It's Dave again here on the Trivaeo team. So I left you in the last video as an administrator, having just started the process of thinking about user roles and permissions for my instance. I've been working off video here on administering the platform and getting it ready. Really the main constituents of that was working my way through the global settings for each of the main settings areas to lay out the applications to receive our employees. So you'll remember a model I've been using is I'm going to pretend that I'm running a small team of electricians, and in the course of that work, some of the projects we get will be really small. It'll just be doing a quick wiring job. Other jobs may be much more extensive, including wiring an entire set of houses on a new housing estate somewhere. That might require us to be more involved with larger scale projects, managing our time and so on. So we'll be modeling those type of use cases using the technology here to help support us in doing that. So yeah, after initial sign up, I started configuring the solution. You'll remember I set my company logo, I completed all of the main sheet areas, and I've worked my way through. I left you in the last video in this series looking at, or asking you to think about the process of establishing your user, or at least the roles and permissions associated with users. So that you're going to find in the permission groups. So you remember I had the basic default on start was a power user. That's where everyone will be established. Effectively, they're administrators of the company. We don't want that, and we started the process of creating a basic company user and establishing the role and permission for a general company user against each of the different applications that we've enabled. Now remember, if you've signed up through advertising you saw from any one of our global partners, it may well be that you signed up only for one of the initial application building blocks. So don't be surprised if many of these on the left are missing when you first start. The idea is that you use the license manager, which you will find here in user management, and enable and purchase additional applications or packages as you need and on demand. What you see me using here is an example of a fully enabled interface for all applications available on CloudWorksIT. So don't be surprised if a lot of these functions are missing when you first sign up as administrator, but still the basis of the guidance I'm giving you will remain very true. So let's continue the journey. We've worked our way through each of these things. I've added a meeting room here in our Monmouth office. I've set the working calendar for the group as being the Acme company calendar, and so on. So I worked my way through all of the different things to establish my baselines. I've also, if you want to, you can integrate directly to Xero, which is an extremely popular accounting package, and it's as simple as clicking on this link and then starting the integration. When you click start integration, it will ask you to log into Xero, and you determine the direction that the sync will go in. So you can have a look at that at your pleasure. Same thing with MailChimp, which is your email management platform for campaigning and advertising to a list of contacts. You can synchronize the activity of your CRM here directly with MailChimp, which is a very useful way of avoiding being marked as spam and allowing people to subscribe and unsubscribe from mailing lists themselves. So more on those details much later. Today I want to carry on thinking about the users I want to add to the system and their permissions. So permission groups, yep, we were on that one. We've established a basic company user, and for each of these basic company users, for each application type, I have set what I want them to be able to do. In a generic sense, for a basic company user, I want to remove the ability for them to have a negative impact on the structure of the solution, And I also want to make sure that they can only see details that are relevant to them. Obviously under a data protection perspective there, maybe if you're looking at the HR system, each user as a standard employee of my company should only be able to view a list of all of the employees in the company, edit their own details, and maybe review the org chart. They're not going to have the ability to administer the application or edit or view all user details, because there may be things that are personal that are stored, like CVs or other records. So give some solid thought to how you want to structure your main users and their permissions across the solution. It doesn't matter if you don't get it perfect to start with. A good rule of thumb is to have a very restricted permission set to start with until your users are asking you if it's possible that they can do this or see that or edit this, so that you add the permissions incrementally. It's far safer that way than starting with blanket permissions and dealing with the accidents or errors that may occur as a result of people messing around with things they shouldn't have been messing around with. Now, before we can actually add users to our system, I'm just going to bring in a slightly different concept, which is the concept of a user that you would add to the system that is native to your company. So that is a user that is inherently associated with your business. It's somebody that you directly pay and are responsible for. And you've also got this concept in CloudWorksIT of a self-service user. A self-service user is somebody that you enable the ability to log into the system in order to review specific things. A really good example would be, let's say we're that company of electricians, and we want our customers to be able to log in so that they can access the team room for their project, so they can look at the drawings, or they can comment on questions or queries that your team is raising of them. It's an incredibly useful way to bring collaboration into your projects by actually inviting your customers to take part in the project huddle, the meeting room, and to view and comment on activities that your staff are undertaking on that user's behalf. Alternative use cases could be you hire a contractor to work for your company on a project. They're never going to be a full-time employee of the company, but you still want to give them access to the project so they can take part and see what the drawings are and what have you. That's also a viable use for a self-service user. Again, now going back to permissions, we need to think about the permission groups that we would give to these users and self-service users. So I've added a basic company user, which is a native user on the platform. I could also go ahead and have a new user role for self-service, and what you'll see here is obviously it's a much more restricted set of initial capabilities, and let me just call this a self-service client. I'm going to say they can see the tickets that have been raised for them. That's really handy if you create help desks or workflow associated with that user. They can see their workflow, they can see the projects they've been assigned to. If it's a contractor type of role where you want them to submit timesheets to you because you pay them by the hour, then great, enable that. Allow them to log time within an assigned project. Yes, I'll do that. And log time for any project? No. Can they see the company calendar? No. Edit their own appointments? No. Tasks? No. Posts? No. Do you want them to be able to easily email other people through the system? No. Do you want them to take part in video conferencing? Yeah, that might be useful. They should be able to view the team room, view the team blog. Maybe not. Create blog posts? No. View the wiki? No. Edit the wiki? No. So whilst they'll access the team room, they'll be able to be provided access to the documents in that team room. That's a different privilege. That's done on a document by document basis. They're really only going to be able to see the tickets and workflow and projects that are raised for them. That's looking good. So from an HR perspective, If this was a client template you were creating for a user to view their projects, then obviously they're not going to have any HR function. If it's a contractor that you're adding to the system that's able to view projects you've assigned them to, then obviously logging time may be relevant and important. So I'll say this is the default role for a self-service user and click OK. So we've now got the beginnings of the capabilities to add users to our company that won't destroy the system or edit or delete things they shouldn't have access to. Plus, we've given or taken the first steps into other users that you add. Typically, the licensing on our platform for self-service is you buy a self-service capability and it gives you a maximum number of self-service user logins. So you don't buy these individually, they're bought in groups. So for example, you'd buy one license for self-service that will allow up to 10 self-service users to log into your system. You can have as many of them as you like, but it would be restricted to 10 of them being logged in at any given moment in time. And you can buy those in blocks. So it's a very powerful feature, this self-service feature, that enables people to get a restricted view of any of these relevant functions across your business application suite to support you and your business. As I said, it could be project related because it's the customer that you're adding as a self-service view, or it could be an employee that's not full-time, it could be a contractor or somebody else that you want to be able to see data and information related to a project. You might even invite all the other subcontractors on a job that you're doing by giving them a self-service login so that they can see the calendar of when your team is going to be on site doing its final fix, and so on. So there's a whole load of use cases here. But now that I've got my permissions set here in my permission groups, I'm now at the point where I can think about adding users against those permission sets. Adding users is quite easy. You can either create a self-service user, we've just been discussing that, which is very simple. What you would do is create them or add them as a contact first in your CRM system, fill in the details that you want them to see, because that might not match exactly with the contact details you wish to store, and then their email address. And obviously the permission group is going to be any one of the viable permission groups that you set. And we just created the self-service client together. So that's available to me. When you complete this form, the recipient will receive an email from your platform inviting them to log in and set their password as a self-service user. Very simple. Now, to adding users and employees to the system, you can do that up here with the Add New button, or you can do it with a quick add function. The difference between the two, obviously, if you add a new user, you can fill in the complete template of all of their details. Obviously, you'd leave this selected so it sends the account information directly to the user. And yeah, any permission groups that you set, they could be an administrator or they could be a basic company user. Or you can set a lower permissions group but enable them to be an administrator over that lower permissions group. So there you can see more opportunities for tweaking in user roles and permissions there. A lot of people don't fill in the form completely. They leave it at its most basic sense and simply use the quick add function, because all you need is a first name, a last name, and the email address. Everything else, including establishing the full record in CRM and HR and the rest of the areas of the solution according to the applications enabled for that user group, will be done by that user when they first log in. So we'll look at that and that process of being added as a user in our next video. Hope you found that useful. Thanks a lot.